Hi, Brendan here, and welcome to Personality Epistemology. So, there's lots of channels that get into the details of the Jungian personality types and derived ways of figuring this stuff out. So I'm trying to focus on some sort of extensions. One is Asta Raami's work on intuition and its application to solving the impossible problems, especially using intuition and reason or thinking in concert with each other and grounding them well in authentic perceiving. So I'll put a link to this article in the description, but it's called Toward Solving the Impossible Problems. I highly recommend this. It's pretty long, but it gets into like humanity is facing some seriously impossible, so-called impossible problems, severe problems, and yet these can be transformed, many of them, by shifting to different ways of thinking, basically, and intuition can be very helpful with that. So one aspect of this is the idea of wicked problems, which Riddle and Weber outlined in their 1973 paper, which has been cited like 20,000 times or something. And I've heard people tell me wicked problems can't be solved and so on, but that's not true. And in fact, what I've come to see is that wicked problems are actually caused by wicked ignorance, or basically not knowing things, and then rather than trying to figure them out, just assuming they're impossible to solve. And so basically this gets into complexity, and I notice that many people educated in the modern world, as soon as something's complex, it's like, oh, that's not my problem. And when something's complex and spans knowledge domains, like the solutions or the ability to understand, break down the problem into parts, it requires different sort of levels of, or disciplines of approach. Many people are not looking across all disciplines, and it's like, oh, I'm missing psychology, let's research this whole field, and then and so on. So I've done this, and I could go into the whole path of how I've done that, but answers are all over the place. It's a matter of where to look. And often people who know the most about solving complex problems are people who are dealing with them, and that often is not people who are considered to know a lot. Let's put it that way. For example, people fighting for their lives, in different respects, often discover things that are not encountered just like going to a job for 40 years, where the income is guaranteed, like tenured professors. So, no offense, but it's true. So, and growing up around tenured professors, I knew something was missing, and it's taken me a while to figure out the pieces that were missing, but now I would say I know enough of them to see a different way through things. So this article, I would really like to translate this into like the key points into something simple, but like one key item here is about super forecasters. But this isn't just about forecasting, it's also relevant to scenario planning and making sense of things. Pay careful attention to their internal knowing, including untethered thoughts and feelings. They test everything, since their most important ability is self-distance and learning from their mistakes. Further, they construct and transform knowledge with others, knowing we can learn to be wiser when confronted with other viewpoints. So, and this article gets into how computing is seen as like the answer, like AI, but human beings are capable of figuring this stuff out. And what I find is almost everyone just runs away from even thinking about all this stuff that's solvable. It's crazy. So, and then it's like where to begin with that. So, I mean, it gets into actually a fact that from mental health. I mean, most of the mental health and psychiatry of the past decades is really anti-knowledge, and it's designed against figuring stuff out itself. But some of the people who have actually thought to figure things out identify that it is possible to figure things out. Like if someone seems to have a delusion or whatever, it is possible to determine where that came from. Like, is it a metaphor and they don't have words to more precisely describe what they're thinking or experiencing, and did they absorb it from someone else, aka brainwashing or cultural influence or something? And then even the issue of people believing, oh, you can't know anything. This comes from like philosophy and cultural osmosis and all this stuff. Or people running into life circumstances where they were not able to figure something complex out, and then a lot of times people absorb shame and a sense of failure and don't pick it back up again. And I mean, I know that feeling as an INTJ with ADHD. Like I'm subject to that, especially with cleaning and organizing, like household organizing. Like I really struggle with that. But then I can do all this other stuff very fluidly, and I mean, I've had to unpack and figure out how and stuff, but so I understand. But a lot of people have what I have with cleaning, with figuring out complex problems, and then even with the cleaning thing, like there are ways to work through it, but then meanwhile I'm dealing with like life and death circumstances of people I care about, and that tends to pull my attention toward that. So and then this article gets into how intuition is, the popular ways people understand intuition are quite superficial, as opposed to this whole subsystem of the mind that people have outlined and identified. And even the Myers-Briggs Jungian personality community seems to discuss this mostly in terms of its own frameworks, as opposed to like what this article gets into. There is overlap, but there's certainly a lot to be figured out here. And it's like scientific intuition, like a lot. Basically, everything that's considered science started with people using intuition to figure things out, and then later it's tested, as opposed to like ignoring and not believing anything unless it's already been tested according to modern science frameworks run through corrupt institutions and so on, or money biased institutions and processes. Like to be clear or concrete, like these category comparison studies often don't take into account the individual differences between individual people, and like what learning can occur and transformation can occur. So there's just so much in this article. The vast untapped potential of internal knowing, and then especially combining it with like researching and learning all these different reference points, a lot more becomes possible. And then in the world, I mean, part of where I'm looking at, part of what I'm seeing in the world is there are many different people with gambits and plans and stuff, but then they end up colliding into each other. And this is where TV Tropes is helpful, with tropes like gambit pile up. So it's like when people are pursuing different plans and visions that already have issues, they end up not adding up to a functional way to run the world. And so that's a whole topic. Anyway, I welcome a discussion of this article. I don't know what the best way to do this is, but like generally I'm seeking to somehow manifest, materialize, bring together, coordinate something like a high-level class where some of these articles could be discussed, and I think YouTube could be one place this can happen, and it can happen other places. So more soon. I'll try to make this not too long. Comments, welcome, questions. I can get some kind of interactive process going if people want to interact. So more soon.